As you guys could see, there's a friendly face is back on the podcast.
Good,
Jonas, thank you, or welcome back.
good to have you back, dude.
Hey.
It's doesn't feel quite the same without three. I feel like that's the sweet spot. So welcome back, Jonas. Guys, welcome to the Ask a Creator Economist podcast. This is episode 5. If you're here with us and you are interested in getting one of your questions answered, please head over to the podcast website. I will link it in the show notes. It's unify.io/podcast. You can submit questions all about the creator economy, audience growth, marketing, anything that has to do with content creation or growth. We're here for you and we will answer your questions. And on that note, guys, thanks for joining me. I want to ask you guys a question. Thomas, it was just the two of us last week, and we briefly talked about AI, and we talked about this photo of Trump getting arrested was like swirling around Twitter and around the internet, and I guess it fooled a couple of people that they thought it might be real, but it wasn't. And less than a week later, there was another instance of like a mass what would you call it? Like a
Meme.
mass misinformation.
Misinformation meme photo thingy,
Yeah. And it was, you guys might have seen it, the Pope drip. It was a picture created by some random, I think, Italian guy or French guy. And he created this photo of basically the Pope wearing like a very drippy puffer jacket, just walking around
Pretty much
Rome.
sounded like an original Montclair jacket in white.
Yeah.
Looked
And,
sick, to be honest.
Yeah, it was dope. Like, if anything, the Pope maybe should adopt some of those fashion
Yeah,
elements.
most of.
Update. And yeah, I thought it was, I just thought it was interesting because we had just spoke about it, and like just a couple days later, something like that happens. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's about to happen much more often, I would say.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And
Especially with things that are harder to verify, because for this one, like, it's fairly easy to tell. Most likely he's not going to wear that stuff. If it's a more subtle fake, things can go properly viral.
that is going to be
Yeah.
the next thing for, like, when you talk about media literacy. The next thing, we will have a wave of people now looking or asking themselves at every picture they see, like, is it real or is it from Midjourney? And we will, and other algorithms, of course, that do the same stuff. And then the next generation will be doing the same for video increasingly often. And yeah, not everybody is going to do it, but it's just very exciting what's happening in generative AI now.
Think from the same realm, did you guys also see the images that the German party AfD used recently a lot on social media? They were like, to everybody that played around with Midjourney before, you could tell at first sight without zooming in that this is most definitely a fake, but a bunch of people bought it and they've been hammering out these images. Also a bit problematic, but different topic, I guess, again.
Yeah, I think it raises the question in my mind. Like, I had literally just thought about this as Thomas was talking. Like, what if there's some like global agreement that we need to put some type of watermark? Could be subtle. It could be something that's only digitally seen. Where there's a watermark where if something was created by AI, there's some way to tell.
Yeah, somebody's gonna Photoshop that out.
Well, it could be. Yeah, I
it.
mean, yeah. I feel like that might be vital.
Yeah, I know still, but even if all AI models, like generative models, would agree to put this on, then you could still fairly easy
Remove it.
Even you could cut it out. Yeah, or you could simply cut it out, like crop it out.
That's why I said, what if it's some type of digital footprint, digital watermark
then you will very quickly find a tool for, like, especially these organizations like parties or so, that want to use it for propaganda purposes or for more serious shady stuff, let's put it like this.
Agendas.
Then they will have like tools very quickly that remove also the digital watermark. So that is, I think that is, like, how do you call it? Not an uphill battle, like these types of battles that can't be won.
a losing
battle. Yeah, that you cannot win. So I think really the only thing that will help is consumer literacy. And but even then, we know from the entire fake news debate, like if something that the first thing you hear about something will always stick, even though you later learn that it hasn't been the case. It is influencing people, and not everybody digs so deep. But that is probably the reason why we do what we do here on the Ace podcast, to try to spin up a segue on the fly here, because we dig deep for you out there to answer your questions. And as it happens, the Pope discussion also, I guess, a great segue to our first question, isn't it, Ron?
Yeah, Thomas, that was a professional segue. It feels like you've been doing this for years.
Ages.
And yeah, that is a good segue to our first question. And it is going to get passed right back. It's going to get hot potatoed right back to you, Thomas. So I'll just go ahead and jump on in. And this question comes from Sarah. So we don't have a last name, but Sarah, thank you for submitting your question. I'm going to go ahead and read it for you guys. So I am a podcast host for multiple corporate podcasts. For one engineering company, for instance, we answer client questions not unlike you do. But clients don't know the company's solution inside out, and so don't always ask the kind of questions my client would like to answer. So now I'm wondering, how can I use AI to generate questions for podcast episodes? And obviously, she is a podcast host, and it seems like she's a freelancer or a contract employee, works for a couple of different corporate clients. And yeah, so this is a very interesting problem. Thomas, do you want to go ahead and take it away? Give us your thoughts.
I can take it away for a minute, and then I would pass it along to Jonas after that, because like there are certain AI angles, and I certainly have played around with a lot of these recently up and coming AI tools, and they are super useful. I think they will boost productivity in great ways, even though it's like they do incredible stuff, but then if you look precisely, you still have to work on fine tuning it, and it's after a while, if you get the hang of it, I guess you can really save time. In the beginning, you just might spend time differently, but I think among the three of us, the most well versed in having tried around, played around, read about it is Jonas. But I do have an angle that I would like to bring up, because certainly use AI to do all this, to create these questions, come up with the good prompts and so on. But what I thought is like, hey, if your problem is that the clients don't ask the right type of questions that you would like to talk about, so besides that, probably your client here has an issue with their communication and marketing. I thought maybe another way to go, just changing it around, is like, maybe you want to invite these clients on your podcast and ask them questions from your point of view, and this way you can talk about what is interesting to you, but also you receive instant client feedback. That is the thought that I had. So I know I took it totally off topic and off from AI, but that is where probably human intelligence still outperforms a bit the artificial intelligence. But on that note, Jonas, like say she wants to do this with AI. What are your learnings so far from working with the chat GPTs and mid journeys of this world?
Well, my learnings thus far, I think I can summarize it best by quoting a tweet that I read recently. Basically, you need to treat it as an intern that just joined your company or joined your organization or whatever you're working on, and that you really need to tell things what it should do. Like, it's not supposed to think for you; it's supposed to execute and do for you. And by that, I mean, if you tell it, for example, to come up with questions, you need to tell it the tone, which areas of the product is it supposed to relate to, which use cases the product can be applied to, or is it more about the pricing? Is it more about like whatever aspect, or the integration in the workflow? So be really precise in what you ask for, and similar to an intern, he might deliver a first draft to you where you would say, hey, that's goes in the right direction, but please change this and that. You can do just the same with ChatGPT, and also give it a proper prompt in the beginning where you describe what you're talking about. So, for example, if this is about a product, describe the product in a few paragraphs. You don't even need to come up with all of this from scratch. You can even maybe take some copy from your website, but basically give it some context and then tell it precisely what you want. You can even ask it questions like, is anything unclear to you? Do you need any additional information from me to come up with this? And also a style. Should it be conversational questions? Should they read like somebody submitted them in writing? All of this you can specify.
You
There's
can
a
even
bunch
tell
of
it
great
like
templates.
give like a persona of the sender, right? You can say like an engineer wrote this question, maybe in this case, or maybe a marketing person writes a question, and this will
Or a
influence,
client.
or a client. Yeah, exactly.
So just I guess that is the most important thing to just keep in mind. Treat it as something that executes for you and not something that thinks for you. And then you will usually get some decent results. And as Thomas already said, they're probably not final, and there's still some touches you need to apply, but the time saved is quite, yeah,
So maybe
Yeah, I
uh,
think
go ahead, Ron.
relevant.
just real quick, real quick comment. I think like the overall takeaway though, Sarah, is that you want to like instruct it, but you still want to be the one to finally decide like which questions would actually be relevant to your target audience. Like because you know it better than the chat GPT. So like you'll be able to differentiate what questions are helpful. You might have to rewrite some questions, add a little more context, or add like a different end goal to the question. So make sure that like you're still the final kind of like the final arbiter of what question gets through.
Yeah, definitely.
And you
Go ahead,
can
Thomas.
even tell it in the prompt to come up with questions where there's a lot of room for discussing these questions. Like kind of it will have a notion of knowing whether it's a question that can be answered with a yes or no, or with just like one fact, I don't know, 70%, or whether it's a question that gives room for actual discussion and talking
Yeah,
about it.
good
Yeah,
point.
and so just to be even a bit more hands-on and specific with answering this question. So the first thing I wanted to make sure that Sarah and everybody else listening understand. So you mentioned teach the algorithm, and on ChatGPT, how would that work? It works like within one conversation, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
usually when you start up ChatGPT, there's like this input field at the bottom where you can put your prompt, and in the sidebar you will find previous conversations. Within one of these conversation threads, it will basically have a memory. So even like for example, when you come up with a question and then you keep doing things, and at some point later on you still want to apply some touches, you can say, hey, the first question you gave me, can you rewrite it in this and that style, and it will pick this question
Still
and
do it.
modify it.
So that is this, and now probably let's lift a bit the curtain, or pull the curtain on how you have been working with it, because I think you used it for some work tasks already, like writing product related stuff. Jonas, maybe you can give an actual example where you achieved a result, and take us through the process of what you did there to get to this result. Do you have something that you can share?
Yes, obviously, sometimes I'm having a hard time explaining our product in a few sentences, as I obviously know it very inside and out, and I know about pretty much all the features and how it's built. So to just summarize it into like 1 2 sentences, for me it's sometimes hard, and it also very much depends on who I'm talking to, which features I want to or should focus on.
The level
And
of expertise of the person you're talking to,
also
that
that,
also
do they
matters.
want like a more technical breakdown, do they want more of a use case breakdown? This varies. And so for a sales deck, I recently used it quite a lot, and first of all I described our product, and this basically long description I saved so I can always reuse it in later threads. Then I described the persona that I'm addressing with this deck, and what their goals and motives are, and how we're going to approach them. I asked whether everything was clear, and he said, "Yeah, later on I might have some questions, but for now, let's go." Had him propose an overall structure, which looked fairly similar to if you've seen a sales deck. That's basically what you would
Yeah,
expect, like a problem, a solution, some features,
which
so
is a
on and
good
so
thing,
forth.
right? It's
And
what you
yeah, yeah,
would want.
I mean, it's basically a best
Yeah.
practice by now. That's what people expect when they see such a deck. And then I went through basically slide by slide and said, hey, is there some talking points given the description above and the persona at hand? What do you think is the most relevant for them. And obviously, I reviewed all of this and didn't just copy paste it over, but it I would say it saved
It
me
makes
more
accurate
than
assumptions.
50% of time. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes pretty accurate assumptions based on the fields that you give it. You ask it for assumptions like, hey, what are some potential USPs or like core benefits that would help the
Yeah.
user? And it kind of makes an assumption that's like logical. It's then
And
up to you to be like, not so much for our clients or our users, but yeah.
Hey, and
it just helps getting you started and
Yeah.
basically hit the ground running, because you read one of these sentences and you immediately have a starting point. Either you disregard it altogether, or you would think, hey, this and this detail I should add, but then it's good to go.
yeah. So, and just another thing that I want to mention, because now we talked all about Chat GPT, and that of course is probably the solution with the most brand value right now, with the most recognizability. I just want to say, of course, there are a few other solutions. One that I just recently, in a fairly complex task around like drafting a contract, or a few paragraphs for a contract, I compared Notion AI with ChatGPT, and very, very similar in performance. So Notion AI, if you happen to use Notion already, you can upgrade there to get full access to this AI. Also does an excellent job of it, because it also uses this model and a few others. They don't are super precise about which models they use, but yeah, also very good. And probably you have some others that you want to name drop.
Yeah, I used one today for the first time. I had it on my to-do list, and I had a good use case now. It's chatpdf.com, I
All right.
believe. And basically, you upload a PDF, and you can talk to the PDF. Give me a summary.
Okay.
It even suggests some questions. Summarize the abstract. Summarize the whole thing. Are there any concrete measures that the author suggests? So that helps a ton. Especially, that was like a 33 page PDF, more in the legal domain, where I didn't really fancy reading the whole
Yeah.
thing, and and I didn't need to know all the
Yeah.
details. Like for me, I just wanted to know the
So
essence of
you
it.
build your own
Perfect,
Blinkist of the PDF.
pretty much.
Cool. That's interesting.
If you would then use a text to voice thing
Yeah.
afterward, you would have it.
I think what could actually be quite useful for Sarah in this case, to bring it back to your initial question, Sarah, like if your client, and I assume it does as an engineering company, has like PDFs explaining the products and so on, probably that's also a good idea to feed the PDFs to a solution like this and say, hey, write a few questions about these based on these PDFs that a client could have, and so you can answer these. I don't know if there is anything else that some of you has to add to Sarah.
No, just use it responsibly. You know,
Yeah.
don't rely too much on it. I think just like previous text creation tools before ChatGPT, before all these new AI tools, I think it gives you a good, like Jonas said, it gives you a good starting point, but it does need a human's touch. It does need to make you need to make it sound more like it's a real person asking a real question sometimes. So just keep that in mind. Try to make it sound like it, as relatable as possible to an actual person had asked it. And I do want to say, Jonas, I like your analogy to like an intern, that like you need to give him very
Yeah. Great analogy.
specific instructions. The one that I've heard was that you had like a super genius locked in a room in your house, and there's no windows, and he doesn't know what you look like or sound like. He has no context about you, but you can ask him any question, and you have to give him enough info that he can answer it. Because I know when I was an intern, not only did you have to tell me what to do and how to do it, when I would actually do the thing, it was unusable. So I don't know if I was, if me as an intern was a good use, but yeah, it's
I
a good
just had
one.
one more question. It takes it slightly off topic, but still very much relates to the question. And that is, where do you think, or at what point do you have to give credit, or basically mention that you help ChatGPT or like any other tool? I'm just using this um, basically interchangeably at this
At what
point.
point do you have to say you helped it? What do you mean?
No, 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 no. You have to give credit. Like, For
Ah,
example, when you publish a text,
Yeah.
is there like a
never.
responsibility to never?
No, because think about how people are using Twitter already. You find your favorite influencer on Twitter. You look at their tweets, you reverse engineer, you say, and most of them just say the same shit, just in a
Yeah, of course.
different tone. People are
But they
already
are not my
copying each
favorite. But
other.
they are not my favorite authors because
Yeah,
uh, you can
it's
easily
just.
like all these threads. Here we found this and that, and now let's dig in, folks. Like that's
I mean,
I mean,
plagiarism has existed forever.
I mean,
You know,
yeah,
I mean, I think it's a question that you don't, you cannot disregard right away completely. I think it depends a bit on the context and what you're doing, I would assume. So, for instance, if you write copy for a website that is like sales copy and so on, nobody would be credited there anyway. So I think you don't
yeah,
need to credit it. I did something the other week. I wanted to know what AI thinks about Web3 and the sports industry. Obviously, that's important to us as a company. And I had it write a blog post about it, which I posted on LinkedIn. I can put the link in the show notes if you want. And there, of course, I mentioned that it was written by AI mostly for various reasons, actually. Of course, I slightly edited it, and I also wanted to see and experiment with how good can it how good can it be. But I think there, like, if you would say, AI, please write a novel about this and that, then I would at least say, you should mention that this has been the tool you used to write this novel. I think pretty much it is, these things are tools. And has been a
yeah.
movie written by AI, and then of course people still had to make it. And now you mentioned because of the novelty factor. Maybe at some point we don't even mention it, but I think if you don't have a good editorial process, like fact checking and making sure everything is understood correctly, but you just publish the stuff as is from AI, then definitely you have a responsibility to mention that it is this.
I think it's a little too much of like a meta ethical question because you know that people are going to be using it and they're not going to give any credit and they're going to build businesses and build entire careers off the back of it.
Sure.
So ethically, yeah, maybe you should, but like you said, Thomas, it depends on the task. If you're like, hey, you know, ChatGPT, can you please give me like 20 of the best philosophical quotes of all time, and then you start tweeting them and pretending like they're your own, I think there's an ethical issue there. But if you're like, hey guys, I used ChatGPT and I got 20 cool philosophical quotes, and here they are,
and
you know, you're giving credit. You're obviously not, but I don't know.
I was actually thinking in an entirely different direction than what you're thinking, Ron. When I thought of this question just now, I wasn't thinking about like ethically that you should, because otherwise it's like misleading and all of that stuff. But I'd rather thought, um, if you continuously publish content that you didn't come up with yourself, basically what this does to your reputation. If you're like always clear about this, basically I created, and this I used help for, then basically it gives you more credibility. And it's like, I was thinking about my
Humility.
reputation rather than like an ethical obligation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and like Thomas's post when he said, "Hey, I used AI," like that the use of AI and him communicating it was actually an element that helped it get traction because you were like, "Oh, I want to see how AI was used." So it can help your reputation, it can help your marketing, definitely. I think that's a good point to move on
Yep.
before we get too deep into the ethical weeds. Sarah, thank you for your question. If you do have another one, please submit it on the website. Check the show notes. You can find where to submit it again if you need it. And let's move on, guys. And the next question is from Aaliyah or Aaliyah. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. It's two A's.
Should be good.
Aaliyah. So I've been an influencer on Instagram for a few years now and have built a decent following.
Cool.
My
Good for
categories
you.
are fashion and lifestyle. Yeah, good for you. That's impressive. And I work with brands on sponsored posts. However, lately I've been struggling to come up with fresh content ideas, and it feels like my engagement is dropping. How can I keep my content fresh and engaging for my audience, especially when I feel like I'm running out of ideas? I can only post my outfits and day in the life videos so many times. Aaliyah, thank you so much for your question. I think you have a version of writer's block. So it's the influencers version of writer's block, and it's a real problem. I think it's something that yeah, a lot of content creators just deal with in general. And I think here's how. So I'm going to take this question, guys, and I think like the place that I like to start when it comes to like writer's block and getting inspiration. Now, because we just talked about ChatGPT, use ChatGPT.
Why not? Obviously.
Ask it for 30 topics about lifestyle and beauty and or I'm sorry, lifestyle and fashion, and then work from there. Like maybe you've already covered some, but yeah, basically that's one. I'm not going to get further into that. You can use ChatGPT for initial ideas, but another one is obviously like competitors. So competitor analysis is something that a lot of companies just generally do when they're researching how to improve their product, right? So you as an influencer, your product is yourself, is your influence. It's it's your day in the life. It's your diet. It's your outfits. It's your fashion. That's the product that you're selling. You could check what other competitors are doing who are in the same vertical or in the same niche as you, and see what types of creative ideas that they're implementing on their videos, right? So, like for example, you can make a video that's all about the fashion, or you can make a video, but you're wearing some of the things that you want to show off, which I'm sure you already know of, right? So the core product, the core message doesn't have to be the fashion. It can just be a supplemental thing to the video. So whether
Maybe,
that's what's up, Jonas?
maybe one more thing. Maybe don't just look at competitors in the same niche as yours, but what you could
Yeah,
also do is pick one niche that is entirely different from yours, one you should be interested in, because otherwise it's a boring exercise, and take a bit of a deep dive in there and see what kind of content ideas they are using and what is successful there, because oftentimes a transfer of ideas from one niche to another is something where, yeah, you can, there's much more of a novelty factor, besides instead of just copying others that are in the same
yeah.
realm. Like these kinds of transfer or idea transfers tend to work also well if you pick good
Not
ideas,
even just
obviously.
Jonas, not even just transfer, but literally combining two niches. So I've mentioned this, I think, on this podcast before. There's a YouTuber, she does makeup tutorials. And while she's doing the makeup tutorials, she's also talking about true crime. Like she'll go
Ah,
through an
yeah, yeah.
entire true crime. So like that's literally like, and then another example, you might not know him. He's a Twitch streamer. His name is Destiny. He does video game streaming. And he talks about politics. Two completely different verticals coming together, and he's one of the biggest Twitch streamers because of it. So combine two different ideas, see how that works. I think that's a nice place to start, right? So another part, and these are like some more practical tips that you can implement. One of which is like including your audience and including their input on your content. So this is something that, as you start to grow, I think becomes a little more realistic. I don't think you mentioned exactly how big, but a decent following, I imagine you can probably start to tap your following for input on content. So you already probably do this by just looking at what content performs well. That's a version of you gathering input, gathering the preferences of your audience. Take that a step further and literally ask them what types of content they want to see. So that's like a great place to start. It makes them feel a little more involved. It engages them. It makes them feel like they had a say, they had a hand in the content creation process. Nothing probably feels better than you publishing a video and then maybe at the beginning saying, "Hey, thanks to my followers who engaged and interacted with me and told me about this. This is this is for you guys," something like that. So that's an idea you could use. Unify the platform that we've created to do that. You can host a voting or host an AMA. You can have people submit ideas, and then you can publish content based on those
I mean,
winners.
without doing too
Thomas,
much
go
And I
ahead.
got
self
it.
advertising at this point, I think really that is one of the core things that we thought deeply about when we built Unify, is how we can enable creators or brands to co-create more with their audience, because that is so important, and it's like almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you do this well and you understand what your audience is interested in, you will always be able to find things that will do well with your audience. And of course, like you say, Ron, there is a certain point of audience size, maybe not size, but you need like people who really care about you, who are willing to go this step, but they will usually have very good
True
ideas,
fans.
true fans. Yeah, we mentioned the
Yeah,
thousand true
it's
fans
referred
concept
to.
before, so
Yeah,
that's definitely something. Jonas, you wanted to say something?
And I got a free idea for you, Aaliyah. Since you said you're in fashion and lifestyle, and this is a lot about aesthetics, one thing similar to what Ron said, like beauty and true crime, do fashion and plants. Like
Ooh,
it's booming as hell. Like indoor planting. I mean, during Corona, it got the first proper high, but even today, it's still like on a whole another level than where it used to be. Also, a bunch of products around it, so potential corporations. I think that could be easy to pick. Also, many of them I don't think haven't really tapped yet into the fashion realm. But I think these are two topics that go well together.
yeah.
Also, you can just have them in your
These are
background.
topics that also fit well
Um,
together. I think we lost Jonas
Feel
here,
free.
so apologies for the technical difficulties. But I will
cliffhanger.
cliffhanger. But I will drop out at this point, or take over, because you can definitely do this, and I like a lot the idea of combining different topics with one another. The second thought, or the thought that I had, is what you can of course also do is in fashion, because she mentions um, because Aaliyah here mentions that she is on Instagram, and so she posts outfits. So that is a starting point. But of course, you can go much deeper, even in a topic like fashion, and develop a niche within fashion. So this can be about different styles on the one hand, but you can also talk about, for instance, I have a few points that I wrote down. High tech materials. There's a lot of development in materials. So if you like this type of stuff, a bit like technology and the production of stuff, go in this direction. Or there is smart clothes, right? Like sensors put into the stuff. That is something that we can definitely that you could definitely think about. Then sustainable fashion, another topic that
Am I
is, of
back?
course, yeah. Jonas is back. Welcome back. I took over from you. So sustainable fashion, another niche that you could develop your content into. Fashion industry economics, if you like the business side of the fashion industry, go there. Or focus on young designers, new up and coming designers. There are so many ways how you can specialize. And then if you specialize and find your niche within fashion, and make it clearer to you, then probably extend your content portfolio. Maybe you want to do videos, blog, podcast, live streams, bring on guests to do interviews. There is a lot. Once you have not only the outfit and the visual aesthetic side of things, but also the content, you can go deeper, and you can also therefore bond differently with your audience. And then, of course, make sure you use Unify to do it, as we said before, because I think we built a great tool to do so. Mm, and you can also, by the way, use the niche. Let's talk the business side of this, to bring on new advertisers. Like, say you go the high tech materials side, then probably suddenly companies that build these new materials want to advertise with you. Or if you already have great relationships with a few companies, then probably talk to them to find the niche that they would say, this would be very useful if you could focus on this, because we would advertise more with you, or do other stuff. So also a way to go. But I guess in all this, and you have mentioned it before, but I want to double down on it. What's super important is you need to enjoy doing it. So whatever approach you take, whether you do indoor planting and fashion, or if you go deeper in a niche, of course, pick something that you enjoy doing and that you want to be doing for a long time.
Yeah, I think look into a topic or to a theme called the micro niche or micro niche, and like long tail niche. Just Google that. Look into some articles or some resources where they talk about that. I think it kind of like sums up that first part that Thomas was talking about. Like you find a place that isn't saturated within the category that you're in, and it's a little bit difficult with fashion and with beauty. It's a fairly saturated category, but I know that there are some that are not as saturated the deeper you go down the rabbit hole. And that could be like a place where you start and you monopolize that with content. you become like the go-to resource for that, and then that allows you to expand and move your way back up the rabbit
Uh,
hole. So
One concept in
yeah.
there, because in identifying this niche, so how could you go about it? That's also maybe an interesting aspect to touch on. So
Chat GPT.
yeah, I think here maybe you need to do a bit more research yourself, and you could
Yeah.
go down the Google, the SEO route, for instance. But I think in this, because it's so lifestyle driven, you want to know who is around in your niche, of course. But a concept that I would then use definitely, because it's not only about how many people are doing this, it's also about a thing, Ron, you have talked in an earlier episode, like the unfair advantage. In which topic can you create an unfair advantage about what everybody else who is already in the niche or micro niche or super micro niche, however deep you want to go, how can you do something that only you can do this well? um, I
Yeah.
mean, not that it's uncopyable most likely afterwards, but it's like, what is your shtick? What can you do? Because
Yeah.
you have the domain, you bring together this domain knowledge, 10 years of indoor planting and fashion, for instance. Or
Yeah, and that's why I like Jonas's idea, because like if you're good and your hobby is gardening, and you're like, damn, like gardening is, it's tough to build an audience. You then combine that with
yeah,
fashion, or vice versa. If like your hobby is fashion and your other hobby is gardening, like no one can beat you. No one can outperform you in both of
yeah,
those.
another is easily, because you have this advantage of this experience in these two fields. So
Yeah.
I hope really for Aaliyah that you are into gardening, indoor planting, then we have solved your problem. If not, maybe you look at the other stuff we just mentioned.
Yeah. Definitely. So, guys, Aaliyah, hope that helps. Again, head over and submit another question if you are interested in getting some more advice. Thank you for your question, and we will move on now to the next person, and it comes from John. John is a podcaster, and I run a podcast about personal finance and investing. I've been doing it for a while. That is a very difficult category, so I'm excited for this question. I have a decent following and make a decent ad revenue. I want to grow my audience and monetize content in other ways. What are some effective strategies for growing a podcast audience and monetizing the content, especially in a crowded niche like personal finance? Okay, so John has an issue where he is in a very saturated niche, not too dissimilar than or to Aaliyah, and he's looking for new ways to monetize. So, which of you two want to take this question first?
I can run with it and say what I thought about it. So going back to the earlier question, really think about what sets you apart. And I think in a subject matter like finance, it's even more important to do it. And because it can be a dry subject matter to an extent, like the people, of course, who read about personal finance, or look at personal finance, listen to podcasts about personal finance, in your case, they are interested in personal finance. But still, and I think just by choosing podcasting, you're already one step ahead of many others, like in the blogging realm, for instance. You have a way to connect also on a personal level that goes beyond numbers. And I think that is super important for the growth aspect of your question, and also in extension for how can you monetize your audience. And when I did a bit of research around this, because like personal finance, it's not one of the genres or topics where I have a super great overview myself, but I found a few interesting examples who do this. One that I picked is a Purple Life, which is a digital nomad personal finance blog. But what the author there does is she also posts sometimes about her favorite video games, about the nomad lifestyle. So it's a bit like what we mentioned before, like crossover between genres, right? It's like here the digital nomad lifestyle, uh, and there is personal finance in there. So I think that works. Or another example, not really personal finance, but what actually one of my favorite writers across genres, one of the best newsletters out there, is Money Stuff from Matt Levine. It's a Bloomberg newsletter, and it's just so good. It's well written, and it's totally not what you expect expect from a finance newsletter?
I need to briefly jump in there because at some point Thomas recommended me this newsletter that was probably like 2 years ago already. And I thought, well, he told me it was one of the most entertaining newsletters to read and it's about finance. And I thought, well, I give it a go. By now, I try to read like at least every other episode. It's coming out daily, not on the weekends, because he makes these things actually
Yeah.
entertaining and quite educative. So if you don't know this, like check it out. Money Stuff from Matt Levine. It's a great
Yeah,
read.
he's awesome. And
Yeah.
not everybody can be Matt Levine.
There's a bunch of I spit my coffee out
Yeah,
moments.
for sure. So he's one of the best, and not everybody can write as well. And you're a podcaster, so not a writer, but it shows that just by changing the form, the tone, if you will, of what you do, you can also find your stick. And then all these are just ways to form a bond with your audience in a distinct way, and I think that is super important if you are in a niche. And now you want to also monetize your audience, and there I have a few thoughts on as well. I think you mentioned advertising, so ads, okay, are one thing you don't mention, and I think if you don't mention it, maybe because you subsume it under advertising, I think it's a different category. Affiliate marketing. You definitely need to be doing affiliate marketing if you're in personal finance, because it's so competitive, not only on the content side, but it's only also very competitive on the yeah, companies who want your money and want you to do money with your stuff side. So affiliate programs can bring on a very good return. So what I found when doing research is Affiliate is like one of these sites that helps you to manage different affiliate programs, and they did a pretty good and fairly recent analysis of which affiliate programs are good. They looked at 100 personal finance sites and blogs and analyzed to which sites they link and link to the most often, because of course that's a very good indicator of how good an affiliate program is, right? If you are a blogger and you repeatedly link to the same thing, then most likely because it performs to you, otherwise you would go on to different affiliate programs. And I will put the article link in the show notes because they identified, I think, 7 or 8 really good programs. That's a starting point for you. I mean, I didn't fact check it, and we don't do affiliate marketing in the finance niche. So do your own research on top. But I think that is a really good starting point, and affiliate go this route. But another thing that I would be doing if you're into personal finance, also think about additive business models besides content. So, can you turn your reach that you have with your podcast into something that is almost like a customer acquisition tool for other activities that you do? We see this a lot now in the creator economy when it comes to merchandise and products that creators do. But so which product could you do? Of course, you could even go as far as say, look, I do a better personal finance solution and software if that is in your skill set. But even if that is not your thing, you're not a developer, you don't have the means to invest in this, probably you can go down the personal coaching route. And while there are some regulatory limitations you should be aware of, depending also on where you live, you probably must not do financial advisory, or you need special qualifications to do financial advisory. So if you have these, great, or maybe you want to acquire those. But even if you don't have this, don't want them, but need them, you can still, for instance, talk about the tools and help people with using the tools in the most efficient way possible to understand these tools. Um, and do this with personal stuff. But if you don't want to do personal coaching and you still want to do it more in a digital way, maybe offer a premium membership where you give more content but also more access to you and your knowledge. Which of course Unify is a great tool to do so. There are also others out there. Look around for yourself. And I mean, even if you think you're very good at money matters, maybe you want to start a fund or something like this, but that is probably too far out there. But these are my 2 cents. Who wants to jump in?
I want to just add a comment that's a little bit a little bit higher level. Some of the strategies that Thomas mentioned, like personal finance, is different than something like fashion and beauty, because in personal finance, like your expertise and not just that, but your track record kind of influences how willing people are to trust you, right? While like a fashion influencer, like if people follow you on YouTube and you're an influencer in fashion, people aren't like questioning how strong your fashion sense is. If they like you, if they like how you look, if they like your style, they're going to like you. It doesn't matter. So there's no performative element to it, right? So if you want to be successful and you truly want to like monetize your expertise and your knowledge, I think the best way to do it is to exhibit and clearly state your track record. So I know a lot of personal finance or like stock tip influencers, their biggest selling point, unfortunately, this is the case, is like how successful they've been in the past with finance. The Pat Flynn's of the world, you might know Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income. He launched this blog, became super popular. One of the things that he did that made him so popular is that he would publicize and broadcast his investments and how much money he saved, how much money the blog that he launched makes. So it's using like quantifiable data is gonna increase your following, and it'll give you that ability to do these premium content, or like Thomas said, these like access to me for coaching. If you could really prove to people like, hey, look, I have a good track record in personal finance. I know what I'm talking about. Like if you work with me, you might be able to match some of my performance. So I think that's an important element that I'm sure Thomas knows that it's a given. Maybe you're already doing that, but it's something that if you're not, you might want to start, broadcasting that a little more and just having it somewhere prominent that people can see that, hey, look, I'm successful.
I very much like this idea. Also, another one that does this is Peter McCormack from What Bitcoin Did. Like his philosophy is, in the end, I make money because you follow me and you consume my content, so I might as well be transparent. And he
Yeah.
shares his marketing revenues, his Spotify and whatnot revenues, his tax expenses, basically, down to the penny what profit he made. And I think that is something that gives a lot of trust to the people because, yeah, usually that's something that people wouldn't
Yeah.
really communicate
It's one of
openly.
those like build in public type themes, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I guess the other one, and it's also a very general approach, like a know your audience kind of direction, but especially with podcasting, there's interesting stats on like what the average listener does. For example, by now almost 50% of podcast listeners are between 40 and 55,
Hmm.
which I found surprising. That is
Yeah.
by some Nielsen study that I pulled up. Also, there's apparently still some room to grow. At the end of 2022, they were asking in a survey that 61% of paid streaming audio subscribers intend to increase their podcast listening over the next 12 months. So I guess the question was, do you plan to listen to more or less podcasts in the
Yeah.
future? And I would think a personal finance podcast sounds slightly different whether you target the 40 to 55-year-old or the 18 to
30. Yeah.
29-year-olds. Also, just by volume of assets they are able to invest in, or the money they have at hand, and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
If you're talking to 50-year-old plus, you might want to talk about just bonds. Just stick to bonds.
Yeah. Risk
Yeah.
appetite
Good point,
differs.
Jonas. Jonas, I think that's actually a super important point, especially in personal finance.
yeah.
I think the demographic and the age really impacts the type of advice you. I mean, are you going to give like a 35-year ETF strategy to like a 49-year-old? Maybe not. Good point, Jonas.
One might even argue, looking at the demographics of your audience, the split between male and female listeners is can be quite interesting, and that can be as subtle as what kind of examples do you give. Like you can talk about the exact same concept, but maybe instead of using a factory, you're using, I don't know, some other brand. A stupid
Yeah.
example now, but very stereotype. You get what I mean, though, I guess.
Yeah. True.
And
True that.
and I think that is almost even smart from an SEO standpoint, right? If you just write it differently with different examples, you maybe rank for different search terms. I don't know what are like the search terms in personal finance that are most looked for, and how
ETF probably number one.
ETF, just ETF.
Get rich fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe those.
Join my Telegram.
Yeah.
Get rich, zero work? Question mark.
Passive income, no work. Yeah.
How I earn,
Yeah.
how I make $5,000 a week with just 1 hour of work.
Yeah.
I have a dead body. How can I turn this into money?
Okay.
Whoa.
Maybe there's
It took a dark turn.
maybe there's something in there, actually. So yeah, and I think these are some of the things you can do to grow your audience. I don't know, did you have other thoughts on the business side of things as well?
Yeah, I mean, Thomas, you covered a lot of like the core. I mean, like I wouldn't say low hanging fruit, but the floor level fruit for monetizing content. The bigger you get, the deeper you can go down the monetization hole, and the more your opportunities obviously open up. So, but for the
And one
most
more
part, those
thing,
are good.
yeah, that I added to my talking points about this is like once you've recorded a podcast, there's basically, if you would write it down, you have a very long text, and now you can distill several things from it, convert it into a Twitter thread that gets the most important points across. You can generate a blog post from this, and basically you don't have to, I was going to say you don't have to think twice, but basically the substance is there. You just need to convert it. And there's also, now again, time for tooltips. There's various tools that help you with this by now, even like just starting from transcribing your audio to text, then helping you to condense it down.
Yeah.
And it's very simple, I guess, to afterwards just generate a few secondary and tertiary products
By the
from it.
way, something we need to start doing here as well, right? Because Zencaster already has like the speech to text creating a transcript thing built in, and then if you feed this to the AI, ChatGPT, whatever you want to use, and then you say, hey, condense it into 1,000-word blog post and give me a Twitter thread and so on. I guess that is how these tools can really be good, with a bit of human editing in the final touches. I think that's a very good workflow.
Yeah. Yeah. General strategy going beyond just John and personal finance. Long form content is great because you can then snip it, clip it, cut it, like Thomas just said, transcribe it, post a blog post where it's literally just a transcribed version of it. There's hundreds of different ways you can utilize long form content. And yeah, you have the benefit of being a podcaster. So most of your stuff is long form to begin with.
And
Is he a podcaster?
he's a podcaster.
Yep.
Yeah.
There is one more thing that just came to my mind, and probably you can help me to think and brainstorm on the fly. But now, if you have this audience all interested in personal finance, isn't there maybe a community play in there that could also be quite interesting? Like you mentioned before, Ron, how important it is to have like performance of the stuff. But imagine you would have like your own forum or a space for your people where they can compare what they actually did, share about this to get even more lock-in of your heavy users. But also this could become a place, and like digital real estate, where you have new ways to monetize it if you do it well, and almost gamify this a bit and have this extension of your audio, but without having to create a lot of new additional content, but have your community on
Thomas,
it.
I like that. I like that idea so much. I might want to take that for myself. Maybe we will. Sorry, John. This is all me. No, that's a great idea. I mean, anytime you can gamify an experience and build some type of community around it, it's powerful. It's strong, and it goes to this topic that we talk about a lot, which is like fan engagement, right, or user engagement, whatever you want to call it. Anytime you can gamify an experience, it's going to perform well. I'd agree.
That's a
Jonas,
wrap, no?
I guess that's a wrap.
I think that is a wrap. And I have a
If
question:
we
is it
take all the
rap with a
themes,
W
I don't. I
I
guess.
would think
I guess yes.
or
you
rap
wrap
like
it up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like when you're done with the burrito?
But I mean, to summarize we should be doing, if we take it through the theme of this entire episode, then create a fake visual run that is for you now because you wanted to do it. Create a fake visual with a mid journey of a smart looking financial advisor type with an edge though, like a face tat or something that you do with the AI. Then you make ChatGPT write a daily blog post about personal finance, but mix it up with the gardening tips as well, because why not? If you can do it with fashion, why not with finance? So now,
But why the face tat?
then pick another thing. You need an edge, something that is recognizable. And now then you use all the cool AI tools you turn it around, because you of course cannot podcast with your super recognizable voice, then we would all know it. You use one of these text to speech tools to create the podcast from the blog post that AI has written. You automate in some way the affiliate programs also. I guess there is a solution for this, and then you gamify it all on your unified platform. No, so you create a fake influencer using AI. You have
But you
fake
need.
AI content. Everything is made by AI. You don't do anything except create this persona.
But I feel like this strategy might only work for like short term or like day traders, right?
Maybe, I don't know.
Like, I feel like a long term investment community might not work too well. Like a leaderboard,
Yeah, I guess we're not quite there yet.
everybody's just floating around 7%.
Yeah.
7.03%. I'm in the lead. Yeah. But yeah, that's I might keep that one for the for the old Ron side hustle
Passive income.
game. Yeah. Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you. That is a wrap with a W. Thanks for joining me on this episode, guys. Anybody listening, if you do want to submit questions and you want us to answer them here on this podcast, please head to unify.io/podcast, submit your question. It's a type form. There's a couple of questions just to get a little more information, and we'll answer them. And I'll probably reach out to you and let you know if we did answer your question. So, again, guys, thank you for joining me. Please give the podcast a rating, 5 stars on Apple and any other platform you use. Give us a rating, give us a share with a friend. And we really appreciate any of you listeners, and we'll catch you guys next week.
And send us questions.
Yeah, send us questions. Ciao,
Bye.
guys.